Welcome to the LGBTQ Northwest Indiana and Pflag Crown Point TV. Your hosts are Mari Victoria and Elizabeth Menning. Good morning. How are you all doing this morning?
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. We're doing very well.
Yep.
It's great to see you too.
Good to see you too, Bill, as always. My name, of course, is Amari Victoria.
And I'm Elizabeth Menning. We both go by she, her, hers.
And we would like to thank the Bill and Collie Show for providing us this opportunity to come into your homes with a show dedicated to everything LGBTQ.
So our TV show here is going to be coming to you every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. And it'll focus on the community here in Northwest Indiana, both LGBTQ people as well as allies. So feel free to spread the word. The show is for all of you.
Our feature topic today will be the first of hopefully several discussions and explorations about the topic of identity. These will begin with a more generic discussion of identity and then later on move to LGBTQ specific topics.
We have some standard segments in the show too that we'll bring each time. One is a little bit on LGBTQ history. Today we'll be talking further about the Stonewall riots. We bring in some LGBTQ news. Today we've got some good news segments. And we'll do our feature topic and then go into announcements about Pride and existing virtual support and education events.
Okay, we would like to start out by continuing our talk about the Stonewall riots. As you may recall, I gave a brief history about the riots and the raids at the gay bars in New York City, as well as the gay rights movements that stemmed from those riots. Today
was the start of the whole LGBTQ movement.
Today, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Stonewall Inn. It was a mafia-owned bar. The Genovese family owned it, and in those days, the mafia found it very lucrative to cater to those folks, specifically in this case, the LGBTQ folks who had nowhere else to go, as they were typically rejected in any of those settings. The Stonewall Inn was a private club, meaning they did not need to have a liquor license, and customers were expected to bring in their own liquor. The Genovese family, of course, to keep out of trouble, apparently bribed the New York City police in order to look the other way, while any activities going on at the bar that would have been deemed unusual were looked away from. The mafia, though, since they are typically interested in making money, did most everything they could to make owning and operating that business very lucrative for them. So some things that we would be aghast at today are things that were typically done. Things like no fire exits or no running water behind the bars. That one in particular, especially in this age of making sure that everything is clean, is of particular interest to me. The inn was very large, and it was inexpensive for the patrons to get in. Usually it was not much to actually go in there. And it was a wonderful place for those people who could not get served or even enter into other establishments around the city. And in fact, many times homeless gay youths and runaways would actually stay at the Stonewall Inn. And at the time, it was one of the few gay bars that actually allowed dancing. The raids that happened were typically those where the bar were tipped off before the raid happened, so that the establishment and the patrons could get everything in order before the police showed up. The morning of the Stonewall riots that we all know, the police did not tip off the bar. Papers. Oh, sorry. The police roughed up customers, made arrests when they found bootleg alcohol that should have not been there, and customers violating the gender appropriate clothing order. I'll segue just a little bit into that. Apparently, the New York police used a very old law that required people to wear 3 pieces of gender appropriate clothing in order to not be classified as a transvestite, which of course was not legal back then. However, the law itself was from 1845, and it really concerned farmers dressing up as Native Americans so that they could avoid tax collectors. So the New York City police obviously misappropriated that law in order to do harm to LGBTQ people. People who were at the bar at the time of the raid by the police, the unannounced raid by the police, just sort of hung around the bar rather than dispersing. And the crowd got increasingly angry and agitated. And it was a lesbian who provoked the crowd into action. I do believe I read something about a person being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon and crying out to those standing around to actually do something. And they did. The riot involved hundreds of people and police. Prisoners, barricaded themselves in the bar, and that barricade happened because the police were actually overwhelmed by the rioters outside. The mob, because the police were inside the bar, actually attempted to light the bar on fire. And of course, we know that the protests lasted for the next 5 days, involving sometimes thousands of people. The last part I'd like to tell you about is Stonewall's legacy. And firstly, the uprising led to the formation of several gay rights organizations like the Gay Liberation Front, the Human Rights Commission, an organization whose acronym is GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D, which at the time stood for Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. This was an organization that actually provided legal services to those who need it in the LGBTQ community. And of course, Pflag, and the acronym back then stood for Parents, Family, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. On the 1-year anniversary of the riots, June 28, 1970, thousands of people marched from the Stonewall Inn to Central Park in what was known as the Christopher Street Liberation Day, officially titled as the first Gay Pride Parade. The official chant, "Say it loud, gay is proud." The Stonewall Inn, Christopher Park, and the surrounding streets and sidewalks were made a national monument by President Barack Obama in 2016, recognizing the area's contribution to gay rights.
And something rather amazing is on the 50th anniversary of Stonewall last year, there were 5 million people in New York City celebrating on the streets. So that was pretty amazing. What's next, Amari?
What's next are some news articles. And Elizabeth and I felt that after last episode's disparaging news about 2 more transgender people being murdered, that maybe we should look for some positive news, and we happen to find some stories.
There is quite a lot out there.
Yes. We have a tendency nowadays to focus more on all the negativity and react to all the negativity. Just like the normal news, they always have the feel-good stories. Well, here's some feel-good stories about the LGBTQ community and those who support it.
Mm-hmm.
The first item I'd like to talk about is that Skittles, that wonderful rainbow-colored candy that we all know and love, or at least those with a sweet tooth, has decided to celebrate the LGBTQ community by removing the rainbow colors from both their packaging and their candies themselves. I understand the candies, however, still have the rainbow of flavors that they always have had, but they're doing this in recognition of the LGBTQ community and in support of the community. This is the first time that it's ever been done by, is it Mars Wrigley, I guess is the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And during the month of June, $1 per package of candies purchased will be donated to the GLAAD organization, up to $100,000.
Well, that's pretty cool.
The Pride Packs are part of a campaign they are calling the Give the Rainbow campaign, which was previously launched in Canada, Germany, and the United Kingdom. And although you won't see the usual vibrant colors on the packaging and candies, they will, of course, have the original flavors: strawberry, orange, grape, green apple, and lemon. A quote from GLAAD President and CEO Sarah Kate Ellis. She says, "This Pride Month, Skittles is removing its rainbow, but replacing it with much-needed conversations about the LGBTQ plus community and a visible stand of solidarity." This is an important thing for manufacturers and organizations to actually be able to find ways to provide support, those who would, of course, for the LGBTQ community, especially in this year where many Pride events, festivals, parades have either been postponed or entirely eliminated.
Right. So along those same lines, Murray, you disappeared.
I don't know.
There you are.
I'll turn.
There
That
you
helps.
go. All right. So along those same lines, Barefoot Wines has a limited edition Pride packaging collection. We were going to be hopefully serving that at our in-person Pride event, but of course, since things are changed, they are actually donating a portion of their proceeds of sales, up to $60,000, to the nonprofit organization Free Mom Hugs. There are 4 different unique designs, and they represent first, community members and allies who have fought for marriage equality. Second, LGBTQ plus trailblazers around the world who publicly use their voices to celebrate the community and advocate for LGBTQ plus causes. Third, the decades-long efforts of the heroic service organizations who have fought the HIV and AIDS epidemic and supported those impacted. And finally, Pride celebrations around the world that bring millions of people together to honor the community and advocate for equality. So they've got vibrant Pride packaging of their rosé, bubbly, and they're doing this as a tribute to the LGBTQ plus community. So those Pride packaging items are available for purchase online. And I thought that was really exciting news. They also are sponsoring the virtual tour of Free Mom Hugs that is taking place now that they can't be in person at events.
As you might imagine, the most important function, I think, of Free Mom Hugs is to be able to provide that personal contact, that communication, that conversation with other people to tell them that they are loved and accepted and wanted, has taken a dramatic hit, not being able to be in public gatherings or attend events that, of course, are being canceled or postponed. We hope in the future that this is not the norm and that Free Mom Hugs will be able to continue their fine work.
Yep. We got one more great news item.
One more great news item. This one just warms my heart. I will probably end up reading most of this rather than paraphrasing. It's again, these news items all come from LGBTQ Nation, not the only source of news for the LGBTQ world, but certainly one that every day leaves an email in my inbox giving me the daily and weekly stories. This story happened in Williamson County, Texas, and involves a lesbian couple. Apparently, they inspired a neighborhood kid to come out, according to the note that was left on their doorstep. As reported by the person who found the package or the note, she said, "I just went out to collect 2 packages from the doorstep at my partner Megan's house that I call home, only to find this note under a rock on the mat. This is why visibility is so important. You never know who needs the support, and to know it's okay. I hope this person is okay, their family is being supportive, and they find a community to connect with that can help them through this brave process." Williamson County is extremely conservative, and in fact, the county commissioners voted 4-0 to not allow the pride flag to be flown on the Round Rock County court buildings. I am proud of who I am and the person I love. I will continue to be visible in whatever way I can.
This is in Texas, by the way.
Right, Williamson County, Texas. The note, I will try to read it. It's actually, there's a picture of it here.
Whoa.
Oh, can't do that. And it says, to the best of my reading ability, "Hello, you don't know me, but my name is," and that's been blotted out. "We're moving away today, but I wanted to thank you. Seeing a pride flag waving so proudly outside your house every day has given me the courage to come out to my family and be more comfortable with who I am."
That was great.
Underneath that note is actually a picture of a person holding both a transgender and a pansexual flag. Topics that we'll get into in depth a little later in other later programs. So the partner, Megan Stabler, shared with the photo, tweeting, "I proudly fly 2 rainbow flags at my home. You never know who needs the support, who is hiding and needs a lift up."
And Amari, do you remember we were out on our deck just a few weeks ago, and a teenager came by on a bicycle and said that they really respected us for flying the transgender flag out front of our house. That was really cool.
I find that heartwarming in more than one way. I have been flying a transgender flag outside of my house for more than 2 years now. And on the one hand, it hasn't really raised the cockles of the neighborhood. But on the other hand, it has garnered absolutely no reaction up until this little girl made that comment. It's good to know that in the case of this item from Williamson County, Texas, or in the case of this little girl in my own neighborhood, it just points out how important it is that we show our support in the ways that we can. And it's also important to me, especially, to note that you are seen, that someone recognizes that you have waved the flag, so to speak.
Validation. Definitely. And to be able to lead by example, to be role models in whatever walk of life you're in, I think is just a great thing. Why don't we jump into our main feature, Amari?
Okay, let's do that. So first, our main topic is identity. And I thought that we'd have a discussion / exploration / conversation about identity.
So Bill, jump in whenever you feel like it.
And I would like to start out by saying that we're planning on bringing in some LGBTQ plus affirming mental health professionals from here in Northwest Indiana and potentially beyond, and actually have them weigh in on this topic of identity as well. So why do I want to talk about identity? Well, I have some personal reasons for that. The very first of which, of course, is my journey of being a transgender woman. This was something that's brand new to me 3 years ago. And prior to that, I guess I hadn't really questioned my own identity, but just learning about what it is to be transgender, what it means, piqued an interest in me, in my own identity. Along with that education that I gave to myself at that time, I also began to learn the labels. And labels are things that allow us to describe ourselves, to differentiate ourselves. And although we won't talk about labels in depth in this session, we will talk about labels in a future session. This also caused me to actually ask the question, where do I fit in this world? Because up until the point of my discovery of being transgender, I hadn't really questioned my identity at all. I probably did, but not consciously. So the research I did then and the research I've been doing now is all to try to answer the question, at least for myself, where I fit in this world. How do I fit into this world? And of course, being that one of my foremost missions is to educate, I want to learn all I can about identity so that I can educate others.
And this is interesting too, because so Amari is the one who discovered she was transgender. At the time, of course, we were married, and there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to continue supporting her, even though I had no idea what this was all about. So it's definitely been a learning journey for both of us. But a reason I'm bringing that up now is because her journey made me question my own identity, my own concept of identity, labels, and where do I fit in the world as well. So even, as the straight spouse, still is a very relevant topic. And I think it's a really big concern among many, many people, Amari.
So I decided that I would do some research on the topic of identity. But before I did, I realized that I had had 3 years of my own education, my own research to base my own opinions about. So I started to build for myself what I felt were the components of identity. And then my online research, of course, hopefully would supplement that. I don't want to say counter, but make me contemplate on other ideas, and just to see where I stood myself at the current moment before I looked at anyone else's definition of identity. So what I built for myself is called a mind map. If you don't know what that is, you can find a definition online. It's a means by which of getting ideas down on paper in an organized fashion that allows you to analyze things, essentially.
It's kind of a neat way of doing this because you're able to just use your stream of consciousness to put everything down on paper and then organize it. It's a pretty neat process.
And if you're a visual person, it is She is. It's a very visual type of data presentation. So at any rate, my mind map's main categories, components of identity, included gender identity, of course, sexual identity, social identity, and moral identity. Now, since those main topics were written down, there have been others that Elizabeth and I have also come up with and crafted, but those are the four that were originally on my mind map.
And we've had some great discussions with some of our friends who, professionals in that field too. So that's been really fun.
I want to make an observation at this point. I could make it at any time, but this is the point where I will. And that is that identity is something that everyone has. Everyone has their own definition of what their identity is. Many people don't question anything about their identity, and they're perfectly happy with whatever they've decided is who they really are.
And think about all those years you spent without having any language to even think about identity.
Yeah, as a side note, I have had identity struggles most of my life. However, didn't until just recently, 2017, realize that there were tools I could use to help me determine my identity, create my identity, etc. So, of course, like most human beings nowadays, my official research into the topic of identity began at Google. On Google, in general, the searches that I found fell into some categories, let's say, one of which was psychological information. Another was the self-help or self-care information. Then there's some information that was specifically pointed at discovering your authentic self, and also information about personality. One of the results of my research was that one concept of identity is that there is a socially and historically constructed concept, and that we learn about our own identity and the identity of others through all of our everyday interactions with other people. Another concept I found was that identity is something that you evolve into. And once you eliminate all those images that were constructed, images of your own identity that were constructed, you really allow your true self to appear.
Kind of like being pigeonholed. Once you get rid of the pigeonholes, you're able to be your own shape.
So one of the things that I had initially set out to do was try to determine what facets or characteristics of identity existed. And many of them, I think everyone will be familiar with. Sex, gender, race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, physical and mental capabilities, culture, nationality, religious affiliation, class status, disability, job status, and personality. All of these things affect us in one way or another, or don't affect us at all. And the next thing I did was take this list of categories and split them up into those which I thought were inherent to a human being, part of our makeup, as opposed to those that were created for us or created by us.
Or by those around us.
Or by those around us. And good examples of that are all the things you learn about your own culture, all the things you learn about your own nationality, all those things you learn from your religious affiliation and your beliefs. And then a very powerful one, but very subtle in some cases, is your class status, or your disability status, or your job status. There's a thought that identity for some people is their job title, that's what defines them. At any rate, the material and resources that I found pointed predominantly to the environment as the source of our identities, and very little about the characteristics of our identity, which are truly innate.
So you're saying that most of the research that you found to date has been around environment.
Yes.
Right? And not so much has been around the innate part.
There's a term called nature or nurture, which is something I found repeatedly. I suspect that my research, which I hadn't anticipated would be skewed in the direction of environmental causes for creating our identity, because I don't believe that every part of identity is environmentally created. I believe that there are some parts of our identity, like our gender identity, like our sexual identity, that are more because of the way we were formed in the womb, the chromosomes, the hormones, all those things that help develop how our brain developed. And I intend to do more research to find more examples of those that support that.
Because it is an age-old question, and there has been a lot of research done on this, but especially around the sex, gender, sexual orientation, you get a lot of challengers that say it's not innate, it's learned. So something that happened to you caused this, and it's just a horrible, awful thing to put somebody through. Is that type of belief?
I do want to interject here just a bit, because I find this extremely fascinating, because from someone outside the community, automatically when someone brings about nowadays I identify with, they automatically draw that conclusion of sexual orientation or identity. But it goes much deeper than that. In fact, I share with you what a counselor told me once. 90% of the issues that he deals with are people who have disconnected from who they actually are.
Yes.
And getting them well connected. So this is refreshing to know that, when, especially in this day and age where a lot of people are trying to find their identity and to find themselves, that sex is just a part of it, an element. And it may be a fine twine, but we know that a lot of times it's not an environmental factor. It may be genetic, and there may not be any controlling factor other than the person identifies that he has a sexual. But we've gotten to a point where we're getting to a binary state that that is hopefully at one time non-judgmental. That people quit labeling. And I think we talked on the last show, I think it's so important that we hear about, especially with the pandemic, what is going to be the new norm. I pray and hope that someday the new norm for us as humanity is that we don't take upon the practice of judging or identifying people except who they are as a person. And their sexual preference or their identity is relevant to them, but should be irrelevant to me when I interact with you or develop judgments. I know that's a simplistic way of looking at the world. It's why I would like to. That's my ideal world. And so, as I hear you talk about that research, I find cause for celebration in that identity is much deeper and much more ingrained than one would only assume. And the human mind is very complex. In fact, I have at least 1,500 identities floating in my head that I should be, as my counselor says, yeah, you should be medicated, Bill, because those pop out way too regularly. So, but with that, without trying to make a joke of this, but yeah, but seriously, this is refreshing news, in that it's much more complex. And as it should be, the human mind is so complex that and people draw so many conclusions about people's behavior and their attitudes, but the mind is probably the most complex mechanism on the face of the earth or in the universe. So that's my statement. So I just wanted to pop in there and make that statement and celebrate with you some of the research findings that you've stated. So
that's great, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think some of the things you that sort of got me thinking was that we don't see people for who they really are. We let the nurture part of us be able to create these assumptions about other people and about their lifestyles and about their inner makings. And you're right, we need to get away from the judgment part because of our own education and our own inherent parts of our identity about other people, because people are truly unique.
There's a term called implicit bias that I know many workplaces are starting to work through to make people aware of implicit bias. In other words, if you flash pictures of two people up on the screen and ask a question, who's more likely to be the caregiver, who's more likely to be a policeman, you make a snap judgment based on your own set of life experiences and the nurturing that you've received. And it's a trap. I mean, it really can be a trap, a limiting trap.
Well, the only judgment I'm making right now, of course, is a lot because I'm coming from the house and there's a lot of noise there's someone here working on the house, so I'm worried about that. And the hopes that we sooner or later get all of us into Studio A so that this green screen effect with people's body parts disappearing stops. So that's where my mind is right now because my hand keeps disappearing.
Oh, I know.
But yes, Studio A will be back there sometime shortly. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. So, Murray, what are we going to talk about next time with identity? Do you have a couple things?
So one of the things I'd like to actually, for my own self-gratification, is to actually try to find more of the research about stories that actually support our innate identity characteristics. I feel that because the research I just did it purely as research, and it's really skewed towards education, towards nurture as being the creator of our identities. And I need some more facts that it isn't just nurture that is identity.
And there are, a lot of research has been done about that. It just tends to be newer. And other thing that we want to do is hear from people about what their understanding, what is your understanding of your own identity, or how did you come to that understanding? So I know we share our email. Would love to hear from people about that. And quick announcement.
And we'd love to have them on the show, right? I mean, we'd love to have people come on and discuss about their paths and their
telling their stories.
Yes. And as I previously mentioned at the beginning of this, we will be reaching out to mental health professionals to get their insights to identity as well and have them live on the show.
That'd be great.
Yep.
What else? Was there anything else? Oh, and the last thing, as well as trying to find more research about nature being the creator of at least part of our identities, I also want to start with something I mentioned at the very beginning, and that's labels. Labels can be used for good. Labels can be used for bad. They can be used to show alliance. They can be used to show distinction. And in the LGBTQ world, I found there is a plethora of labels, and I would like to start discussing those labels and what they mean.
So, kind of a teaser for some future shows here that we're going to be doing twice a month. I guess we wanted to just finish up with some announcements, especially about Pride, since Pride Month is upon us here in June. And I'll start with the Pride updates, but as some of these Pride festivals or Pride parades are some of the biggest in-person gatherings in the world. And of course, June is right in the middle of this coronavirus situation. So everybody is scrambling to reimagine their Pride events. So, even New York, the, birthplace of Stonewall, and the 5 million people last year have had to cancel. But there are a couple of virtual Prides taking place. So Indy Pride is not going to be in person, but they're going to do a virtual event on June 20th from 1 to 9 p.m. our time, Central Time. And there'll be more information about that. There is a global virtual Pride on June 27th that's going to take place over a 24-hour period. And it's being planned right now by a dozen groups from around the world. And right now it's going to be a streaming online event. They don't know what platform they're using yet, but it'll peak in time zones around the world. And in each of the time zones, the regional Pride organizations and local Pride organizations are going to be directly involved in the programming. So that's going to be pretty cool. A quote from the one of the people there is, "The Global Pride will show the LGBTQ plus movement for the very best it can be, showing solidarity at a time when so many of us are mourning, and strength when so many of us are feeling isolated and lonely." So we're going to, that the whole effort is to show our resilience and determination that Pride will be back bigger and stronger than before. And a big push is actually going to be on fundraising to help the financially struggling LGBTQ support organizations to survive, so they can keep helping others, such as, the HIV testing facilities and support organizations, support meetings, that type of thing. The elderly, the young, HIV positive, transgender people are really being devastated right now with the coronavirus. So NWI Pride, which we're both wearing our t-shirts for, originally scheduled for June 6th, is going to be on September 12th right now. We're still crossing our fingers and hoping that's all going to work out for an in-person event. But of course, as we mentioned last time, we do have some backup plans percolating around in case that a large in-person event is not recommended at that time. So more to come on that. But we will definitely be sharing news about the Pride events. We do actually have an in-person run, Love is Love 5K, arranged by Paul Stofko of Crazy Legs Race Series. And that's going to be on the 21st of June.
Bloom County Park.
Near Westville. And of course, people will have to run 6 feet apart. So no neck and neck ties. And then the last thing we wanted to mention, as we do every time, but there are a wealth of online resources right now, both here in Northwest Indiana and nationally. If people are struggling with LGBTQ topics themselves or with loved ones, Pflag Crown Point, Northwest Indiana, runs teens groups. We have social hours and support meetings for LGBTQ teens and their allies. We also offer just a community group meeting twice a month for usually adults and older teens. We have the LGBTQ Northwest Indiana Mari, you want to mention yours real quick?
I'm still holding my Monday night adult transgender support group meeting on the second Mondays of each month. It's virtual at the moment, but we're hopeful that those will soon go back to physical space. And on Wednesday evenings from 7 to 8, I have a Wednesday night social hour.
Again, for
transgender or gender nonconforming persons, just to be able to get together and have an hour to talk. It's a poor substitute. It's more of a happy hour.
Yeah.
Without the alcohol. But it's meant to try to provide some community
and connection
in this time when we can't do it physically. That at the moment replaces my second transgender support group meeting, which occurred on the fourth Wednesday of every month. And eventually I will go back to that. At the moment, my plans are to continue these Wednesday night social hours until the end of June, and we'll redetermine what to do after that. And anyone who's interested can shoot me an email at info@lgbtq-nwi.org.
Yep. And then there's a couple other great opportunities. Mosaic Health and Healing Arts in Goshen has moved their Saturday meetings for transgender and gender nonconforming people online. And those are Saturday morning every week. So if you're interested in that, we can either connect you with them or just reach out to them directly. And then Pflag National has a program called Pflag Connects, and it offers services for both Pflag chapter leaders like us, or as well as for the general community. And every Thursday at 3:30 Central Time, they have a virtual session, and it's on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, I believe. So more information on that we'll make available on our websites. So if you're hurting for support and connection, there's all kinds of opportunities. Whether you're an LGBTQ person, or you're an ally, or you're somebody who just wants to know more about it or how to be an ally, there are so many opportunities. So our next session is June 4th, our next episode.
Okay.
So
great.
Any closing words from you, Bill?
No, it's just I really appreciate that what you're doing for your community, and I'll state this again with the risk of sounding redundant. The better we can begin to understand each other as human beings, and of individuals, beyond our looks, beyond our skin color, beyond our religious beliefs, beyond our sexual orientation, or who we believe we are, we become more intelligent as human beings. Our society will become more intelligent and more residual. And I can't help that things like this pandemic are meant to test us and our understanding of each other. And so I just want to end by saying I appreciate both Mari and Elizabeth. What you are doing for your community is amazing. Putting the word out there, providing support services for those who need them, and providing a platform for people to come on and share their story, I think would be amazing, absolutely amazing. So
that's going to happen in the near future, Bill.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'll celebrate when that happens, and hopefully we'll get to be able to do that in Studio A. That's right. Back in our virtual background here. Isn't that an awesome building? Oh,
nice.
You were there. Yeah, I know. A couple of people said, "Wow, this is like a real TV station." I said, "Well, we kind of are, but we're still playing pretend." In fact, my executive producer just popped in a little while ago to ask when I was going to be ready to go. Yeah. So we better wrap things up here for today.
All right.
Before we close, though, Bill, I'd like to mention two things. Again, just a reminder: that if anyone has thoughts of suicide, any ideations whatsoever, the National Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255.
Say it again.
Oh, that's 1-800-273-8255. And in our continuing efforts for tobacco prevention and smoking cessation, I want to repeat the smoking cessation hotline number, 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill
Thank
and Callie
you,
Show.
Mari
We
and
really
Elizabeth.
appreciate your sponsorship or your production of these shows.
I appreciate you guys. I really do. Anything to help out the community, we're willing to do. We love you guys, so keep that in mind. So
Great, thank you.
We love you too, Bill.
Well, not many people do, so you're consider yourself a
More than you
very
realize.
small group. So with that, we'll say goodbye, and please have a very safe and very enjoyable weekend, and try to stay connected, as difficult as these times are. Reach out to your family, reach out to your friends, your partners, whoever they may be, and remain human. That's all I'll say for now. So goodbye. We'll see you next
Bye.
time.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Sip Coffee House 2 in Highland, Indiana on Jewett Avenue. Great coffee, lattes, smoothies, and more. Food and treats you will adore. Small town charm with big city selection. It's Sip Coffee House 2. If it's breakfast, brunch, or lunch you need, Les Cafe is the place to go, indeed. Open 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. 7 days a week. Les Cafe Pancake House, located in Highland, Indiana on Highway Avenue. Les Cafe, where less is more. Promise You Art House, a fun and vibrant place for local artisans to display and sell their creative works, owned and operated by artists for artists. Conveniently located at 8830 Kennedy Avenue in Highland, Indiana. For hours and events, visit pyarthouse.com or follow them on Facebook. Promise You Art House, where creativity reigns.